Well, thank you for volunteering to do this. I was really excited when I saw that you volunteered because usually, sorry, there's fruit flies flying all around me. Get away. Usually what happens with Joe Out Loud is usually it's a lot of women and there's not a lot of men that are willing to jump in and share, like to just be
Mhm.
vulnerable and real.
Yeah.
And I think that it's as important, if not more important, that men are doing this as well. So when you jumped in and said, "Hey, me," like that was, I was like, "Yeah, high five." So uh, thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem. And it's one of those things too where I'm um, one of the, I speak fairly openly and honest about a lot of stuff, especially about mental health and how like the big thing for me with especially with everything in COVID, like we know that COVID is a respiratory disease. It does a lot of damage to people, but there's also how much mental, emotional, and physical damage is being done to the people who say are like our age demographic and younger, where chances of us actually having dying from it is very, very, very low, or
Hmm.
like, or especially the kids, where like there's like worldwide, there's been like maybe a dozen deaths worldwide for kids, and but we've
Hmm.
completely interrupted their lives. Like the watching the kids at the gym is at least they have that outlet to go to, whereas they don't have school or they can't go to their friends. And slowly things are opening, but in my opinion, a little too slowly. But
Well, and the mental health impact on the kids, like you're absolutely right. It's been such a challenge.
yeah.
Um, I have teenagers, and
Hmm.
also we run day camps here at my job, and the kids are just so glad to be together.
Yes.
Like that's just it. They don't care what they're doing as long as they're together.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's been such a challenge. And also not having the resources around to help them with their mental health challenges
Yeah.
because they've been so isolated. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about that? You do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Yeah. I train Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and mixed martial arts at the Canadian Martial Arts Center in Lethbridge. Um, I've been there since January of last year. I've always had a huge interest in it, and taken a bigger role. Rachel and my wife and I, Rachel, we're trying to start a family last year, um, and part of it, downtown Lethbridge got a little bit unsafe for it's still a little bit unsafe. So I actually talked Rachel into taking a ladies' jujitsu class, basically for self defense.
Hmm.
And I had gone to it because I loved Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and mixed martial arts for 20 years. I started watching back like UFC 1. And and so I started going and I got her to go and she fell in love with it the second day. And the the mental, emotional, and spiritual stuff that I find there, like I go there and I'm 40 and I'm going against guys mostly younger than me, but it's still the challenge is there. But it also helps me grow
Hmm.
because when you open the door, you kind of check your ego at the door at that place. Because if um, you don't, you're gonna end up getting quote unquote butthurt a lot. Because you have little guys like me, like I'm only 145 pounds. Like we did a drill today where guys were not doing what they were supposed to be doing just because I have the technical skill now. And so it frustrates them. You can see it on their you see it in their face. Like it's like they're frustrated that they can't do what they want to do to me, but it's just because I have a skill level. And the kid side of it, I'm actually taking a bigger role in it at the gym. A few weeks ago, I actually taught the adult jiu-jitsu class for the first time because our head coach and his son, who's Lee and Jordan Meehan, Jordan was fighting for Bellator, so he was gone for a week plus the quarantine and everything. So I got to teach the adult class, and at the same time, one of our other instructors that teaches the kids, uh, he got hurt, so he couldn't teach the kids class either. So I got to teach kids class and the adult class. I kind of got thrown in feet first. Here you
Oh.
go. And but it was great because I taught the 8 to 12 year olds and the 8 to 12 and the 14 through 16-year olds. And the the level of commitment that those kids have to it it's absolutely amazing to see that, and the energy they bring to it. Sometimes a little distracted, but the energy they bring makes coaching them so much fun.
So if you could choose, would you choose to coach kids over adults, or
um,
is it kind of a both thing?
It's kind of a both thing right now. Usually Lee coaches the adults, so there's probably not a whole lot of room to do that other than the occasional time here and there. But that's generally the transition as you develop in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu specifically. Usually the running joke is once you become the blue belt is you become the kids teacher. And uh, last weekend both Rachel and I tested for our blue belts in Jiu-Jitsu and got them. So I guess I'm taking the next quote unquote proper step in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and
Gotcha.
and teaching, and then Rachel will probably start joining as well. There's a ladies only Jiu Jitsu class starting up here in September that Rachel will be helping out teaching with. One of our other uh, ladies at the front counter, Jen, she's a blue belt as well, and she's going to do that. And her and Rachel did the last one before COVID shut us down, and she loved it. And it's something that both of us are, again, being older. My plan is to have one MMA fight, and then it's basically I just want to be there to coach and be a part of the team, and that's I've always played team sports. I've played hockey for since I was 5 years old. Like I've always been
Okay.
on skates, so being a good teammate and a good part of that is uh, something I've always been around. So being there for some of the guys, I may not have the skill level of some of them, but there's the mental side of it where I see some of the younger guys getting a little bit frustrated. Like we had a young guy, like a 15-year-old young guy in our adult class today, go up against a really big, strong guy. He did for the size differential and the age differential, he did really well. And you can see he was dejected. I walked over, like, no man, the guy's got like 120 pounds on you of pure muscle, and no, you're doing good. And it was funny because three people came up to me and said, hey, that was pretty good what you did with the kid. And one of them was his brother. And so I always thought I'd end up coaching. Actually, I always thought I'd end up coaching hockey, but it turns out it looks like I'll be coaching Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and mixed martial arts in the gym here sooner than I will hockey.
And how cool is that that you and Rachel have found something that you love to do together and apart? Like
Yeah,
that's a really cool, it's cool to have a shared passion, but that you each own your own piece of.
yeah, and that's the best part about it is we have like today was actually the first time in quite a while that we were able to work together as a partner doing the class, because for the longest time Rachel and I have been uh, as white belts we've been at the higher skill level, but then now as blue belts we're expected to help the new people to class. And today the room was full of so many blue belts and purple belts and brown belts that we actually got to work together for a chance, and um, it was fun. The drill we were doing wasn't so fun for me because I'm a longer guy, and this drill is designed to break guys like me down uh,
Okay.
physically, to do a guard pass. But it was nice to actually work with her again, and it's we have a different level. And she always laughs. Is everything turns into jiu-jitsu at our house? Like, look, we don't cuddle anymore. We slowly grapple.
I was just gonna say, like, I can just picture it. It's like a throwdown for who decides on what the movie is, and
Oh no, she still gets to pick the movie. I no, no, but yeah, it's funny that way. But yeah, these things always end up like we'll be sitting there and it'll be totally innocuous, and then somebody will move one body part in the wrong spot, and the other person will grab a hold of it. We're like, oh, here we go again.
because you can see it, right? Like it's just in your, that's hilarious.
Yeah, no, but it's
So so you talked about the three aspects of jujitsu. You talked about physical, mental, and spiritual.
mhm.
And so what does your w- I know that you've talked a lot about it in the last year and how impactful it's been on your life.
Mhm.
And what habits has it changed in you? Have you added things? Are there things you do every day that are tied to the spiritual side of jujitsu, or the mental health part of it?
Um, yeah, I spend a lot more time. Uh, the big thing is I spend a lot more time not worrying about being perfect all the time. Like that was one
Mm,
thing, and that even goes back almost 11 years now with other stuff that's happened in my life that uh, I've always that's one of my defaults of character is I'm too much of a perfectionist to the point where Rachel says, "Is it good enough?" My answer is always no, and she looks
mm,
at it and goes, "No, Jamie, this is good enough. It just doesn't meet this ridiculous expectation you have." And going there has made me going to the Canadian Martial Arts Center and especially working with a lot of the professional MMA fighters. I'm never going to be perfect because if I get one technique dialed perfectly in, there's always a counter. Doesn't matter
mhm,
what I do, there's always something there to counter that. So I've always got to be um, one step ahead. So, but yeah, like the spiritual side of it, it's really made me like, and it's funny. I get heckled at the gym because I'm one of about a handful of people who bow in and bow out of the gym. And that goes
mhm.
way back to when I was a young kid in Saskatchewan. I actually took karate. That was my first introduction to martial arts, and this was back early mid '80s.
Okay.
So, and it was you bow in, you bow out, everything that you did, and that kind of just stuck with me. That part of it, and just keeping with it. And like I said, a few of the guys they bug me about it, but it's what I do, and it's funny. They bug me about it, and then they turn around and do it at other people's gyms or anything. But it's just fun ribbing. But the that side of it, last year, it really showed that it can take myself out of the negative things that happen. Like I said last year, Rachel and I were trying to start a family, and
Mhm.
we can't. We found out
Oh.
we are one of those couples that infertility is our life. And the only thing that we could do was out of our price range, and that was it. The very first place we went to, when we drove from Calgary to Lethbridge, we went straight to the
Mhm,
gym and started repping things out because it was a place where you walk through the door and you have to shut the rest of the world off.
mhm.
Because if you go onto the mats and you start training things and you're still thinking about the other stuff, you could very easily end up getting hurt and seriously hurt by accident, but seriously hurt. So
Mhm.
it's one of those things where, um, and I sit there and I spend a lot of time and I do a lot of meditation on certain things, and that's something I never did before. It wasn't something
Mhm.
that it was. Um, I guess it was you're the quote unquote you're a man, you need to tough it out kind of thing was one of those
Mhm.
things that uh, that always was there, but I also realized that I yeah, that may be true, but at the end of the day, there's still things that go on between my ears that if I stick between my ears, my
Mhm.
head goes sideways really fast,
Yeah.
and that impacts the mental side of things and the emotional, where I can destroy myself between my ears if I don't get out and get and do things. So like jujitsu, some stuff I have a fellowship that I'm a part of that gets me out of that stuff and allows me to do different things in my life. So it's that part of it's definitely interesting. It's not a conscious. I'm going to go and be spiritual today, but
Mhm.
every time I go into the gym, it's just a natural thing that happens. I don't think about it. I don't push it. It just happens.
It's a place for you to just leave it there,
Yeah.
and then the stuff you have to deal with, you do deal with, but you don't have to deal with all of the other stuff that
Yes.
you build up, right? Yeah. Yeah. So let's go back in time.
Okay.
Time machine, that's what it looks like. Yeah. Can you tell I'm a kid of the 80s?
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Most of us. So disclaimer for everybody out there: Joe and I are related. Our moms are cousins and stuff. And Joe's only a couple years older than I am, so we've known each other for let's just say a long time.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. A long time. So let's talk about that. So you're the oldest child, right?
Yeah.
Oldest of how many? Oldest of five.
Oldest of five. I'm the oldest, and the youngest is 10 years younger than me. And and yeah, and my we were originally from Saskatchewan, I was born in Regina, and then my siblings were born kind of spattered all over same area. Um, Family has been a big part of my life. My mom passed away in 2013, and it was a big thing. Like, it was a hard thing, and sadly, it wasn't the first time I've had to deal with a loss like that. But my family moved us out to BC when I was in grade 5, and we it gave me a different aspect on life because in Saskatchewan, everybody knows it's a little more conservative out there. And
Mm-hmm.
where we moved in BC was definitely not so conservative. So it was quite the
Mm-hmm.
adjustments, but it also made me a person that could sit down and talk to people from all sides of everything because I understood them from both spectrums. And this is why I kind of sit myself in the middle. And like my family is most of them are still back there. There's a couple of us out here in Alberta, and but for the most part, it's like I said, we're spread all over. I got the opportunity to build a house with my dad in 2018 off of Lesser Slave Lake, and it's good that way. But yeah, no, my I've got a big family, and then the Ingram side of the family is really big, and the Anderson side of the family is not as big, which is where Joe and I are. That's where our connection is.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah. Yeah, family's always been important. And like your mom was just amazing. She was like such a kind heart. Um, let's talk about, I know that you struggled with alcoholism.
yes,
And so um, I have family members that have struggled with that as well. And I don't really like the word struggled necessarily because I think that it's, I don't know. Anyway, um, you know what I mean, right?
I know exactly what you mean, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where um, the struggle is the right word. Be destroyed by it's another word. It culminated. It was quite. I used to live in Calgary when it started to get really bad in the early 2000s, like in the noughts, and I used to joke with one of our other cousins that I lived with him at the time that I'm never going to make 30. Like, and I was positive I was never going to make 30, and I thought there's going to be lots of reasons why I do so, and it almost came true. On I was um, when I first really realized I had a problem and was time to take action on it was 2008, and I went to treatment, and but it literally destroyed my life, like to the point where my family didn't want to talk to me. Like my mom literally said to me after I got sober was, I didn't want to call you in case you were in that state. And it
Mm,
was easier for me not to call you and think you were okay than to call you and hear what you were doing and not get mad at you. And it was something that stuck with me. And as like I said, I took my first kick at the can in 2008, and I went to treatment, and I was sober a few months. Things were going okay. And then the first loss of my life happened, which was Carson, my son, the lady I was with back then. Uh, she got pregnant, and that was part of the catalyst of going to treatment and stuff. And and oh, I can see the chat. Um, the Haley is the daughter of the lady I was with, and so
oh, okay.
um, I was I was I coached her U14 soccer team, and
Oh, cool.
uh, things happened, and Carson had trisomy 18, which is really not compatible with life for males. We made the decision to interrupt the pregnancy, and that was that. But I held him. I have pictures with him. That was the first big loss. My mom was there
Mhm.
for that. Her mom and stuff was there, and it was one of those things where um, it was hard for me because I'd been sober for a little bit, and we went to Calgary and got all the testing done. We were in I was in Cranbrook at the time, and got all the testing done and everything. And the lady I was with, she's a maternity nurse, so once she had all the information, she knew what was coming before I did. And
Mm,
we were staying at my sister's house in Red Deer at the time, And we got back there and she's like, well, if you want a drink, let's have a drink. And we did. And I did. After being I was gone in July. So I was about 4 months sober, and it was off to the races back again for me. And I talk about this usually to a very select few of people, but I guess the world will find out. That night, this is how bad it got for me. It was, we drank a bottle of wine together, and then we're gonna go to bed. That'll be the end of it. Yeah, no. My sister had, as everybody mostly does, has a liquor cabinet. Well, I found the bottle that had the most amount of fluid in it, picked it up and drank as much of it as I could before I went to bed. That's my alcoholism. That in that instant, I was given the okay to go, and I was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got worse and worse and worse, till August of 2009, to the point where the same lady we had split up several months earlier. She had gotten a whole bunch of phone calls over that weekend, over the week previous, going, Jamie's out of control. And she showed up to my apartment that I was staying in. Came into the apartment. She never had keys. I know how she got in now, but I didn't at the time. And I guess she watched over me for a few hours, thinking this close to calling the ambulance because I wasn't going to make my 30th birthday. I was 29. I had left my keys in the door of the apartment,
Oh,
and the supers knew her and let her into the building. And then she walked up and went, "Oh, keys are in the door. No wonder she could get in." So after that, I made a few phone calls. Things just seemed to line up. I had an appointment with my psychiatrist, who I'd been lying to for 6 months. I'd been seeing him after Carson had passed, and um, went and said, "I need help." He's like, "Okay, who do I?" And he was like, "You have three choices. You can go to Ponderosa House in Cranbrook. You can try and do it on your own, and there's fellowships for that, or I can send you to Calgary." And I said, "Let's go to Ponderosa House in town." So I was there for a week, got detoxed and sober up, because alcohol, surprisingly enough, I don't know how many people actually know this, but alcohol is the only drug you can die from uh, during withdrawals.
I think that's actually important. I didn't know that until I had somebody close to me have to go through it. I didn't realize how difficult it is and how hard it is on your body, and like it's just crazy. So if you don't mind, do you mind talking about that? Because I think it's an important part.
Yeah. So the technical term for them is called delirious tremens. Your body starts to violently shake. It's basically mini seizures. I fortunately didn't have them very badly. I shook a lot. Thankfully, the house that I went to, they gave you a basic variety of different vitamins and supplements and things like that to help uh, combat that stuff. But it's still one of those things. If you do it, if you know somebody who's struggling with alcoholism and you just take their alcohol away, you might be doing just more danger to them than just stopping them from drinking.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those ones where it needs to be monitored, and very closely. Um, that week was very little sleep. I remember it was a very uncomfortable bed I was staying in, but that's because I had to lay in it for 8 hours at a time, and didn't and couldn't leave the room during the night. But it was also one of those things where it was like, um, everything was like, what's the right term for it? Spiders under the skin. Anybody?
Oh,
Yeah, and it was one of those, and it's the same as people trying to kick tobacco is another one that's very much to get that same feeling, like itchy, crawly skin. Um, the shaking, the delirious tremens for me wasn't, like I said, wasn't as bad as I've seen, and since that week I've worked with a lot of people, and that's the one thing that I'm like, people have called me and said, "Hey, X person is um, we're going to try and get them off alcohol." My first thing is that you need to take them to a detox facility of some sort, whether it's a hospital or a drug and alcohol detox center. Please don't do it by yourselves. Or if that's your plan, you need to have people with knowledge with you at all times, because it's one of those ones like, Like fentanyl will kill people straight up. You put it in your body and it'll kill you straight up. But the withdrawal from it won't. Same with all opioids, benzos, all that stuff. So
Mhm.
it's something that, if anybody's out there listening to this, please, like I said, take care of your loved ones, because the withdrawal can actually do just as much damage as the drinking itself.
So, just staying on this topic just for just a few more minutes, because alcohol is such a an acceptable part of our society and often talked about as a coping mechanism and in jokes and all of that stuff. Um, if you could look back, what like what led to the kind of drinking that was excessive for you, or would you even like say that that's how it was?
Oh, it was definitely excessive. I think, like for me personally, it became it, I was I had lots of acquaintances. I still do today. I'm a pretty reserved person. I'm open about talking about things to people and that, but like I don't have I have a handful of really close friends. Um, and back when I was drinking, I didn't have that. I had acquaintances that we
Mm.
would go to Friday, Saturday night. We would go to the nightclubs when I was younger, or we'd go to the bar during the week, like wing night. And of course, in Calgary, wing night was every night because
Yeah.
everybody had wing night every other night. So, but it was one of those things where it was, once I got that first drink in me, it was go till there was no money left, either in my pocket or in my bank account.
Mhm.
Um, it was one of those things where I was just, um, I don't think there was one specific trigger. Like it wasn't like and it's funny because when I actually went to university to study addictions counseling, and I never finished for various reasons, but the one counselor that does like, she's really known in Canada for her assessment process. And so she sat down and did an assessment on me. And she's like, "You don't fit three-quarters of my markers, but I have no doubt that you're an alcoholic." And it was like my family was really good growing up. My mom was sick when I was a teenager, so I took on a little bit more of a share as a teenager of what felt like I coached my brother's hockey team because, my mom was sick, and it was easier for me just to drive him. And I was in grade
Mhm.
12 at the time, and I was 17. Um, my family side of things, our family was pretty solid. We had family issues like everybody does, but family was pretty solid. I had never really seen poverty. Even when I was in Calgary, I always had a roof over my head. Um, I relied on roommates sometimes to pay my rent some months, and then I paid their rent later when I had a bigger month and stuff. So I was very fortunate that way. It was more, I think, it was the chemical reaction within my body was the big one. I'm one of those former drinkers that once that once it was in my system, it was off to the races. And and I know like now going, like I said, I've talked about the fellowship, and there's been a bit of an increase in the people that I've seen that are new coming in, but there's
Mhm.
also in Lethbridge, I'm one of the people that I get reached out to a lot by different people, whether it's my partner's drinking too much, what should I do? And I'm like, well, there's lots you can do, but there's lots they have to do first.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and but for me personally, it was I love the feeling of being numb all the time. And that's towards the end, that's what it was. I just didn't want to feel anything. And especially like in after Carson, I was like I really didn't want to feel anything. Like, um it was just easier to be numb all the time.
Mhm.
And but leading up to that, it was the social aspect. Like I used to go to a bar and talk MMA stuff with the guys at one bar, and then the next night it was I don't follow football. I like okay, the Rough Riders because I bleed green. But like everybody loves the NFL football, and I don't give a rat's butt about it.
Mhm.
But I would go play that stupid QB1 game just so I could sit at a bar and drink. I was terrible at it. I knew nothing. I was guessing 99% of the time. But it was I got to hang out with cohorts from work and drink. And like even to the point where the first person who ever pointed out that I might have a drinking problem was my former boss at A&B Sound back in the day. And he's still in my life today. He still sends me messages. He was one of the people that says, "Good on you for stepping out and doing this." And I've never forgot that game ever. He was one of the first people, and I laughed it off like, "No, it's not a big deal. I don't drink that much." And
Mhm.
and when I got sober on August 31st, 2009, I came back to the apartment after being a week away, and it was littered full of bottles. I'm like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely a drunk. That is 100% for sure."
Just couldn't see it until that day, huh? Yeah. So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Everyone has people who change their lives, and it's sort of trickled throughout our lifetime. Sometimes it's like a teacher when you're 10, or so who are the people who helped guide you and changed your life or redirected you?
Um, one was Dean when he first made that comment, and it was like it was in passing, but not really. Looking back on it, and I've talked to him about it. He's still up in Calgary. I don't talk to him as often as maybe I should. Another one is a really good friend of mine from Cranbrook. Uh, he helped steer me in the right direction after I made the decision it was time to get sober. Him and his wife are really good friends of ours. I've known them for a decade. They were like our wedding was really really small, and they were one of the few people that came from outside of it. Um, Rachel was a big one that helped. She really holds me accountable today. There are times where my brain gets a little squirrely, and she's like, you're what haven't you done in a little bit? And I'm like, okay. And it's like, yes, dear. It's one of those ones where it's like, as soon as she says it, and if she sees it, something is definitely not, um, is definitely not right in my thinking and stuff. Um, my mom was a big one too. One of the most heartbreaking, heartwarming, soul-seeking things that ever happened to me was the fellowship I'm in. There's some work that we do, and one of them is to make amends to people in the past that we've wronged. And I made my list and started making amends to people. And of course, one was my mom. And the greatest things that ever that ever happened was when I was starting to make my amends to her. She goes, "Can you stop? I know what you did. You know what you did. We don't need to rehash the negative stuff that you did. Plus, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that I can probably tell you about that you don't remember." And she's like, "Don't do that stuff anymore,
Mhm.
and make a living amends every day to me. Do what you're
Mm.
doing now and continue to do it for the rest of your life."
Wow.
And that was one of the greatest things that I ever said. Don't get me wrong, some of my other amends that I did, there was the lady I was with, the amends that I did with her. I laid everything out that I thought I knew I laid out. Then I sat down for an hour and listened to the stuff that I didn't know about.
Mm.
So that was eye opening as well. But the big one with my mom was not perfect and never will be. Just
Mhm.
keep doing the positive things in my life and continue to move forward. And there are times today that I make a mistake. Everybody does, but
Mhm.
I own them, and I call the person, or I sit down and have coffee with them, or if I uh, like even in my business, there's times where I make a mistake and in we got a miscommunication. I quoted something, I didn't do it upon completion, and it's like, well, no, that's my fault. I missed that. I'm not going to charge you any extra money, even though technically I'm done the job. I'm going to go back
Mhm.
and fix that. So I make a financial and a business amends to that person, or that family, or that business, or whoever.
Mhm.
And yeah, it sucks. Sometimes the pocketbook takes a hit, but on the other side of it, there's a lot of good that comes from it, because at the end of the day, when I reflect back on my day, and I can go, yeah, I made a mistake here. Did I make
Mm-hmm.
amends on the spot? Yes. Or did I make amends? Did I, okay, I made this mistake. Did I make amends? No. Okay. It happens tomorrow. I make a call and be like, hey, can I meet with you? 9 times out of 10 people are like, whoa, what's up? I'm like, this is what happened. I told you this was going to happen. I didn't follow through. This is my amends to you.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, and people are shocked. They're like, you're admitting you're wrong? Absolutely. Because if I don't, it personally for me, if I don't go and do that kind of stuff, it sits and festers, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes one of the worst things in the world, a resentment towards myself, because I sit and watch that stuff grow in my own head, and it worries me, because if it takes up too much space in my head and I'm not doing the positive things,
Mm-hmm.
oh, my next drink's only like this far away, and it's one of those
Right.
things that,
That's what a like just what an amazing perspective to hold, but also probably very difficult if you have a perfectionist personality. Like that's I was thinking this morning, is it possible for people to change? Is it possible for a selfish person to become unselfish if they're in middle age? Like if they've lived 40 years, just only concerned about themselves, is it possible for them to be concerned about other people? And I think that what you're demonstrating is that it's absolutely possible to change those really hard parts of our personality. But it's a daily determination to do that. Like there's that fruit fly again. So I think that's just really, really powerful and really important. Um, because nobody goes it alone, right? Um, and in hearing you talk about Rachel, like I just so admire, and like the clear trust between you. The I just picture her with her hand standing behind you with her hand on on your shoulder, like she's got your back.
oh
Um,
yeah,
and that's that's powerful, and that's um, I don't know that it's luck. It's something that you deserve. So that's really cool.
I got a quick funny story about that. So before I met Rachel in 2012. I was living out here in Lethbridge, still going to the university, and I had a run of a couple of girlfriends out here that were just terrible relationships. Like it was not healthy on either side. And I actually went the it was the summer, it was July of 2012. I was out in Slocan at mom and dad's, and my mom said to me, she's like, I said to her, Mom, I'm done dating. I'm done being destroyed by having my heart ripped out of my chest and thrown back in my face. I'm done with it. I'll just be the fun uncle. I'll do all the fun things for my nieces and nephews. And and just as a disclaimer, I'm not the greatest uncle in the world. I don't spend any time with my nieces and nephews because they're so far away, and that's my fault. But with that being said, there's um, my mom said one thing to me. She's like, I want you to make one more effort, like one actual strong effort. I'm like, well, I've tried. She's like, no, no. Like, have you tried eHarmony, or have you tried like going on speed dating, or have you tried any of these things? And I'm like, well, no, I did the half measures thing of like plenty of fish, and and that was the only
You
thing.
didn't find the love of your life on Plenty of Fish,
No,
Jamie?
no, I did not.
That's so
And
weird.
so I'm like, all right, fine. So I signed up for eHarmony, and I was like, this is I'm just gonna throw at the time it was like $120 for the 3 months or whatever, and I'm just gonna throw it away, and that'll be done with it, and that'll be the case. Well, coming up to the end of August, which would have been it was the start of my third month, so I had a couple of conversations, but there was nothing there. And then I get this message from who turns out to be my future wife, and I literally read it and go, "This is a bot from eHarmony trying to get me to stay on longer so I could re-up my subscription." That was literally the thought in my head. So I sent back like literally the shortest one-line answer to I answered as many of her questions, comments as I could in one sentence. But I thought it was a joke. I thought, no, this is not true. then she responded back, and we responded back again, and went back and forth, and we started texting each other. And I was like, we had set to go on our first date like on a Wednesday of all days, and and uh, and I said to her the one day, which was September 18th of 2012, I can't wait any longer. Can you meet me for coffee? And she was like, yeah. So we met for coffee, and a year to the day later, I married her.
Wow.
Later, like
Wow.
September 18th, 2013, we got married.
Oh, holy.
So, and it was like, and it was, and when I took her home to BC at Christmas, the last Christmas with my mom, um, I got probably the greatest compliment ever, and it wasn't, and this is because Jamie as an individual could be, and even still then was pretty selfish. But as when Rachel and I showed up and we gave the things that we did and that, and we were sitting down for dinner that night, my mom said, "All of you," pointing to everybody but Rachel and I, this is how it's done. These two, top of the ladder, and I've never been top of the ladder of our family ever. And it's like
Wow.
it's an ongoing joke with our family. It's like which siblings on the top of the ladder all the time. It's Katie's on the top of the ladder all the time. The oldest sister, she's almost always there. One day it was me. One day, and I was super happy. And Mom and I had a conversation regarding Rachel, and then uh, she had left the room and we were talking, and she comes back and both my mom and I are crying, saying, "You do realize that she loves you?" Huh? She's like, "No, no, no, no. She loves you."
Oh,
And Rachel stops and is looking at us like, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I explained to her when I was working retail at the time, so I had to be back for Boxing Day back in Lethbridge. On the drive home, I explained to what happened, and a friend of ours called and said, "Oh, I'm getting married," and it was kind of really, really rushed because, like, compared to us, it was like they'd only been together a couple of months. And
hmm.
I jokingly turned to Rachel and said, "Maybe we should get married this summer and show them how it's really done." And Rachel was like, "Nope, not happening. No." I proposed in February, on the 18th of February. She's like,
Yeah.
"Don't you dare propose on Valentine's Day." And I'm like, "That's never gonna happen ever." And I lied to her for like a week, bought the
Hmm.
ring and everything, got it sized, and it was February 18th is the day I proposed to her, and she didn't even know I was proposing.
She didn't even know you were proposing?
I got 2 lines into the proposal. She was, mind you, we were supposed to go have pancakes. She was hangry, and it's like nothing in my life ever goes smooth, Joe. It was to the point where the jeweler had sized the ring but hadn't finished like doing the polishing and stuff, and I showed up at the jeweler's like it was a charm, and the jeweler hadn't brought it back yet. And I said, "You you guys said it would be done yesterday, and it's not done yet." They're like, "Hold on." And they called. And they asked, "When's the proposal?" I go, like, "Right now. It's supposed to be happening." And my phone's like, Rachel's like, "I want pancakes." And I'm like, "I understand. Give me a second." And I concocted this BS story about having Ramsey's my dog, and it's now our dog. And I got Ramsey when I was with Tara and Haley, the Carson's mom and sister, and Ramsey came with me, and I was like, "We got to take him to the park first," because I had a spot picked out where I was going to propose, and it was at this park. She was not happy with it, not at all. And I got 2 lines into it, she realized what was happening, and the rest is history. But yes, she is one person that holds me accountable day in and day out, and um, and it's great. And yeah, the fact that we found something together that we do almost on a daily basis together
Hmm.
is amazing. And leading up to our, like I said, a week ago, we did our belt testing. She didn't do any of the training with me for the belt test. There's 2 ladies at the gym she worked with, and I worked with some of the other guys. So she took it upon herself to get her blue belt, not because it was I'm going to do it with Jamie for Jamie. It was I'm going to do it for Rachel.
Yeah, which
And
is what's so cool about it.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Just really, I'd love to talk to like the two of you together sometime because I think you guys have a lot of lessons that a lot of us could use when it comes to relationships. So I'm sure that there's a few hangry stories in there too.
oh, there's a few. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool. So before we wrap, I'm just looking at what I wanted to ask you. Um, do you have any like set in stone daily habits that you do?
Set in stone daily habits. On a 7 days a week consistent, not really.
Okay.
I the big things that I've used over the last 10 years, 11 years is um, there's a few books that I go to quite a bit. There are uh, recently there was a new book that came out by David Goggins, talks about his life in that I read, and I love how the fact that in the book he says, if this motivates you, put the book down, don't read it anymore. I want you to be
Mm.
motivated by you. Unfortunately, I was already in that headspace.
Wow.
And it was like, and he goes, people will get motivated by this for like 6 minutes and then they're done. And it's,
Hmm.
and he has some challenges and stuff at the end of every chapter that he wants you to do. And I listen to a lot of audiobooks and different things like The Art of Living by Epictetus is another one that I've been going through. And it's amazing how things that were written in the 1500s or 1400s still apply today, like Marcus Aurelius and stuff still apply
Hmm.
today. And it's very simple things that um, I mean, I'll apply them every single day at a specific time of day, but there's things that'll pop up in my head, and I've archived them as best as I can. Um, something that I don't do is I don't ever memorize books. I always force myself to go back to them because every time that I go looking for something, I always find something else on top of it. Generally,
Mm.
I'm stubborn enough that I'll look for what I was looking for, and then I will stumble across something else. Um,
Ooh.
which is always really cool, especially a book I've read 100 times, 1,000 times.
Yep.
Uh, I'll come across it, and the book gnomes seem to go in and slide a new sentence in there for me, but it's changed.
And how
And
much does that actually define your life, that statement? You go in looking for something and come out finding something completely different.
a
Like
lot,
that.